Hi, this is episode 12 of Crondos. I'm your host, Jordan Hudgens. I'm a Ruby dev and the CTO of the DevCamp platform. On Tuesdays, I cover topics related to getting jobs in the tech industry. And today, I'm going to talk about different strategies for applying and interviewing for an enterprise software development job. If you're a developer and you've worked for freelance companies or for different startups, I think you're going to find that the enterprise software industry is a lot different. It has a lot of benefits, but it also has some unique challenges that I think it's important to know, not only for being able to interview well for it, but also to know if it's really the type of environment that you want to get hired in. Some of the pros in working in an enterprise software position is the companies are usually pretty stable, much more so than the typical startup. They're usually profitable. They have a number of structures and types of systems in place that can make things a little bit more organized if you prefer to have that type of working environment. In addition to that, they usually have you focus on one specific task. So if you specialize in database management, you probably aren't going to be working on the front end. Whereas if you work for a startup, you might have to do the job of 50 different developers in some way or another. And in an enterprise software job, you're really able to focus on one task and be very good at that. Some of the challenges to be aware of in working in an enterprise software environment is there's usually a lot more red tape for developers. This isn't always the case, but it definitely is quite often. In fact, just last week I was sitting down with a developer who works for a pretty large company, and he was talking about how frustrating it was because he was working on the front end of an application and he wanted to bring the jQuery JavaScript library in. It's one of the most standard libraries to bring in. It's used on millions of websites throughout the world. Very standard, very stable. It took him about 2 months just to get it approved by all the different supervisors and people that had to review the code, make sure the library wasn't bringing in any viruses, anything like that. So just be aware going into it that you're going to have to jump through a lot more hoops. You can't just go and rip some Ruby gem off and go throw it in your code to be able to build in some quick functionality. Things usually have to be very well vetted and tested, which can be very good because these companies, one single bug can cause millions of dollars of damage. So they're very, very careful about that. So make sure you know that going into it. So what types of questions should you be prepared for when applying for an enterprise software job? Be ready to answer questions about how well you work with formal processes. Depending on the company's level of formality, you'll most likely need to explain how you've worked with different project management processes such as Scrum, extreme programming, and processes such as that. At large enterprises, software bugs can cause millions of dollars in damages, so the testing systems are typically quite thorough. With that in mind, make sure you're prepared to answer questions related to unit testing and behavior-driven development. And in all honesty, no matter what size company you're working with, you should have a really strong understanding of how these processes work and how you can use them in applications to make sure that your code is well tested and functions the same way in development that it does in production. Considering that we're living in a Microsoft-based enterprise world, having a solid knowledge of how well you understand ways to integrate with Windows servers, Active Directory, and tools such as SharePoint will be very important in the enterprise software space. I've personally been asked how I would integrate Active Directory single sign-on into a Ruby on Rails application, along with how you run Rails on a Windows server during various interviews. And if you know the Rails development system, you'll know these are not standard requirements at all. As with most development positions, you'll also need to have a solid understanding of the technical skills of the position. This usually includes being able to give accurate answers to questions related to object-oriented principles and a walkthrough of popular algorithms. The technical portion of interviews will most likely be specific to the job. For example, if you're applying for a front-end enterprise software job, they're probably not going to ask you about Quicksort. but they will ask you on how to properly manage JavaScript callbacks, for example. Hopefully these 4 areas of questions will help you prepare and feel confident for applying for a software development job. And good luck with the interview.